Peace at the cost of Donbas or war to the last? This is a significant question that today divides not only the busy offices of world politicians, but also the heavy hearts of millions of Ukrainians. Is Putin really ready to stop now? And is Europe truly prepared to pay for Ukrainian contract soldiers to prevent a much larger war? Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said in an interview with the BBC that Ukraine's withdrawal from the 20% of Donbas currently controlled by Kyiv would divide society. Moreover, in his opinion, this step would not stop Vladimir Putin. According to the president, Ukraine cannot agree to abandon its territories. I see it differently. I don't view this simply as territory. I see it as a surrender and a weakening of our positions, an abandonment of the hundreds of thousands of our citizens who live there. And I am certain that such a step would divide our society, Zelensky said in the interview. When asked for clarification on whether the withdrawal of the Ukrainian armed forces from Donbas would satisfy Putin, Zelensky replied that in a few years, the Kremlin leader would resume the war anyway. It would probably satisfy him for a good while. He certainly requires a brief intermission, but in my view, he could fully recover in just a few short years. Where would he go next? We don't know, but the fact is that he will want to continue the war. That's the opinion of the president of Ukraine. From his perspective, Ukraine's victory is not only about reclaiming its sovereign territory, but also about the preservation of its people and independence. Ukraine's victory is not only about reclaiming its sovereign territory. More specifically, during the conversation, the BBC host noted that many analysts outside the White House, as well as United States President Donald Trump and other officials, strongly believe that Ukraine cannot win the war and, if it does not make concessions to Russia, will lose it altogether. For this reason, Zelensky was asked whether Trump and the other politicians are right. Where are you now? Today you are in Kyiv, in the capital of our motherland, Ukraine. I am very grateful for that. Will we lose? Of course not, because we are fighting for Ukraine's independence, the head of state said. He strongly emphasized that victory means restoring a normal life for Ukrainians and finally bringing an end to the tragedy. I believe that stopping the head of the Kremlin, Vladimir Putin, today and preventing the occupation of Ukraine is a victory for the whole world because Putin will not stop at Ukraine, Zelensky believes. The president remains convinced that in the future, Ukraine will definitely reclaim its territory. But if this attempt is made at this very moment, considering the massive number of people in the Russian army, it would inevitably mean the loss of millions of Ukrainians. We understand the cost of such actions. You won't have enough people, you will suffer losses. And what is land without people? Honestly, nothing, he explained. According to him, Ukraine's victory, in addition to preserving its people, also lies in preserving its independence. As for the return of territories, that will be a victory for justice. Ukraine's victory is the preservation of independence, and the victory of justice for the whole world is the return of all our lands, Zelensky concluded. He also suggested that Ukraine could move away from mandatory mobilization and transition the army to a contract system, provided there is adequate funding. According to his statements, Ukraine can transition the army from mobilization to contracts if there are sufficient financial resources, and the European Union can provide the necessary assistance. When we talk about people, Europeans can help here. If we switch our army, or when we switch our army from mobilization to contracts, the head of state emphasized. Zelensky believes that this is the same thing that Russian President Vladimir Putin is doing. He pays each person money specifically for a contract. And we want the same, but we do not have enough resources. That is where Europeans can help. So far, Europeans are not funding this program, the president concluded.